Live!
Hello!
Hello!
La, la, la. Ironically, I was just watching Seinfeld inside. Welcome all. It is Monday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. Which episode were you watching?
Actually, what was on just now, oh my God. It was, now I'm going to draw a total blank because you're asking me, but it was so friggin' fun. Well, the one that had ended was where she was being Susie and Susie was her. And it was like, come on, at the end of that one with Elaine. They thought Elaine was Susie and Susie was Elaine. Oh, the one that was just on was when the toothbrush went in the toilet with Kristen Davis. The toothbrush went in the toilet. And I'm thinking, how ridiculous is this that we thought that was so, like, why wouldn't he just say, hey, I accidentally knocked your toothbrush in the toilet, so we should go grab another one? Like, it's just not that big of a deal, you know, but in retrospect, it was so funny.
So obviously you know what, I always find it interesting whenever we're going live, whenever we're like finding out different things to talk about and all that good stuff. And then I realized that as soon as we're about to go live, there's like 50 stories that all come together all at one time. And where does one begin?
Where do we begin?
Well,
usually we sit here and he tells me what he wants to talk about, and I'll veto anything that I think is stupid and TMZ-ish. That's basically what happens. No, it's true. Like every single time he'll want to talk about something a little bit more pop culture, like something click worthy. No, but you do. Like you'll want to get into it with some of the nonsense. And I'm always like, no, I don't want to talk about that. So that's how we do it.
What would you like to talk about?
Oh, look who's back. Chip is back. Hey, Chip.
Speaking. Good to see you.
That's Chip.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I want to talk about thank you, Tony D.
Hopefully you stick around for another month. Tony D sticking around for another month.
Yeah, we have a lot of things. There's always things to talk about. But I generally censor out what I consider to be the petty, stupid shit.
We're like politically married. No wonder we're so miserable with each other all the time.
We can't get married. First of all, I'm legally married to someone else. So that's problematic right there.
Yeah. And I'm never getting married, so there you go.
He's saving the world.
I am saving the world.
He's saving every woman out there from himself. I assure you, he is saving you from him.
Well, if you guys want to hear something funny, I have been not with one, not with two, not with three, but with at least 4 women over the course of my dating life. That I was the last guy that they dated before they got married. Like they dated me, and then the next guy, they got married, and sometimes it happened quick. So I don't know if that's like a sign or something.
It's also a timing thing. Like as you get older, more and more people want that. And as you don't, they do. So then they'll inevitably go off and find that. So that's why.
That's possible.
Yeah. Women tend to be nesters. Not all women. I mean, I'm not, not all women. And let me be the first one to advocate against that thing. I am by no means a supporter of any sort of social constructs of sort of like marriage and monogamy and all that stuff. And when I started getting into that sort of like life, it was just what was done. I can't explain it. I sort of just fell into it. But like at this point, I just see that there's just so many different possibilities and ways of living and existing that don't involve what is essentially a patriarchal white supremacist institution.
Could you please stop with that?
Well, it is. It's like an ownership situation. And yes, I realize in this country there's benefits, and there are definitely benefits. Like you get certain benefits. But
that's true.
I'm just saying I am not a proponent of any particular lifestyle. I am a proponent of everybody's lifestyle, as long as it doesn't necessarily get in my lifestyle.
Yeah, because it can't cross into your territory, which would definitely not be good.
No, but I like everybody doing whatever it is they want to do.
So as you all know, there are a lot of places that we can start. I don't know if we could just kind of do it as a compilation of sorts, but I have always been very adamant about the realities of Donald Trump, but also the realities of where our society stands right now and why Trump is as popular as he is. Not a reflection necessarily of his candor or his policies, but more so of the decay of our society.
I appreciate his candor sometimes. It's he very much, I would say about his candor is actually what allows him to be correct, maybe 50-50. Like, I think it actually gives him an advantage over other people that he lets the quiet shit slip out loud, because otherwise, like the rest of them that don't do that, they're kind of lying all the time. Whereas he's kind of lying half the time, and occasionally shit slips out that happens to be true. And we get like nuggets of actual information. So I don't know. That's when I actually do and again, I'm not a Donald Trump. So let me put the disclaimer. I am not a Trump supporter.
No, but we are living in a time where it is necessary to speak truth to power. And unfortunately, we are living with a presidential administration that does support censorship in many ways.
Well, it isn't just them, though.
No, but
Let
they
me
just
be
happen
clear,
to be in
this
charge
is-
right now.
They happen to be in charge right now, but
Yeah.
what we're seeing as far as censorship is a global capital phenomenon. This
Yes,
is not something that is happening in this country in particular. The right-wing authoritarian censorship style, fear baiting, McCarthyism type of nonsense is happening globally. It is. It's happening globally. We are seeing like this. It's a revolution that is brewing at the feet of what is now this sort of like authoritarian, I don't know, regimes all over the place. But I think that we're seeing them sort of in their death throes. But that's why they're cracking down as hard as they are. When people feel threatened, when authority feels threatened, that's when you start seeing more legislation that are restricting our rights. And you see it state level, and you see it federal, and you see it global.
And that's also the problem with the hacky, hyper-partisan politicking of the day. We'll save. Obviously, I want to talk about. We'll talk about Navalny in the context of Julian Assange, which I think is much more relevant to everything that we've seen over the past several days.
Before I forget, we need to get Kevin Gustoll on at some point to talk about the thing when it comes up.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Regardless of where people are landing on this particular issue, and it is amazing. It is amazing how there is nothing. And I mean nothing that can be discussed these days unless it's on hyper-partisan lines.
This is why I don't watch those news channels. This is why I can't watch that nonsense, because it's so, first of all, it's so pointless.
It is.
What they're arguing, every time I put on, I'm funny what my people who make fun of me for watching Days of Our Lives, and yes, I do watch Days of Our Lives.
Are these the Days of Our Lives?
I don't care. And you mock me as you will, I don't care. But the idea that they could be having the same conversation for like 3 days, that's how I feel about these ridiculous things that get nitpicked with every little freaking thing that becomes like this total tribal war. And it's not even relevant to what we're dealing with right now. Or it's something that's like, oh, this is somebody who was outspoken against Putin and he ended up dead. Okay. Yeah, that's very unfortunate. But then it's like, are we talking about how we just take out political prisoners and people left and right? Like, I just feel like when people want to make something newsworthy that is commonplace, I find that annoying.
And this is where it becomes really this hacky partisan, hyper-partisanship. And nobody, in my opinion, on the Democratic side at least, really exemplifies that notion more than one of Debbie Wasserman Schultz's best friends, might add.
I actually see how they could be friends. Like they seem similar. They're very matronly. I can see I could see it.
So yesterday on Meet the Press, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Bill Maher's favorite candidate for president, had a few things to say regarding the assassination, because let's be honest, he was killed. Navalny was absolutely killed. But it wasn't just in that context. There's always a means to an end. And this is the thing about using any circumstance, especially if it's with a foreign nation that we consider adversarial, even if they're really not.
Well, she's such a war hawk anyway. She's someone that would use any opportunity. I just think that it's interesting that we're so critical of a nation like outside of the extrajudicially taking out one of its own citizens. But yet we will go into other countries and like kill their leaders, like just assassinate them like Soleimani. And that's just sort of like, okay. And that yet then we're totally just assassinate somebody because they don't. But, and again, I'm not saying it's okay, whatever Russia did to kill this man. I don't know, but it just seems like, how is it newsworthy that kind of shit happens when it happens all the time?
And here's why, when these types of things happen and the reactions that you get from people in the Beltway, it's always very telling that there are casualties of war or casualties of warfare. And that's where Amy Klobuchar comes into play.
The president for over an hour and talked about so many things, domestic, international. He was focused. His recall was good. It was the same experience that my colleagues had who met with him for hours, Democrats and Republicans, about the Mideast only a few weeks ago.
So this is the thing.
This is what Jon Stewart was talking about.
If everybody is so concerned about the president and his cognitive capabilities, and you aren't going to not only go on national TV, but do they not realize that they all get the same memo and they all say the exact same thing?
Right,
and
it's
it makes
so
them
funny.
look so transparently hack-like.
But if you notice, these people that we're talking about that do that are of a generation and a mentality that it's like, I always feel like saying the 80s or 90s called they want their politics back. So they're still approaching life like from that era, as if we can't sit here and see the compilation of all of you saying the exact same talking points on top of each other. It's almost like she doesn't realize that she's not standing behind the curtain anymore. Like, that's how ridiculous it is.
That's Amy for you. Here we go.
Others say they don't feel it. They're not feeling the impacts, the numbers, the figures that you're talking about. They don't feel it in their pocketbooks when they go to the grocery store to buy groceries.
Okay, well, there are many challenges in front of us, and people are going to have to decide if they want to go back to that chaos or look at someone that actually has the proof points of working on bringing costs down. Our job right now, if you talk about...
What costs are down?
So when you're alluding to this idea of, all right, I'm going to try this talking point. I'm going to say that inflation's really not that bad. Cost of living's not that bad. Yeah, it is. But when that gets confronted and someone says, well, most people can't afford A, B, or C, and there's a reason why they have to have multiple jobs because we don't have a living wage and we don't have health care, then it's going to transition into, yeah, but the other guy's going to make it worse if you bring him back. It's like, we can't fix anything.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You people, all of you shills for Joe, you can go on this. You could say it until you're blue in the face. Keep going. His legacy is genocide.
Yeah, that's going to be really hard to
and the truth is, you can't scare the people who are seeing that something else is scarier. Because really, at this point, it's, you know what? I just recently heard a really good, and this comes from Malcolm X. It does not come from me, and it's definitely not like a verbatim quote, but the idea of that you stab somebody in the back, somebody stabbed in the back, okay? And the Republicans want to just leave the knife in. The Democrats are willing to pull it out 3 inches for you. And it's just,
I have a better
but it's like, what difference does that make?
I have a better analogy.
Okay.
Republicans stab you in the front, right in the heart. Democrats stab you in the back and tell you the Republicans did it. Just saying. All right, let's finish this.
We dislike everybody equally, actually.
Just about.
Avenging the death of the hero Navalny. If you talk about anything for our democracy and actually for our economic partners across the world, it is to get this security package over the line. And so extreme Republicans are stopping it right now. The president's standing up for it. The Senate is standing up. 22 Republicans in the U.S. Senate voted for it, including the lead Republicans on armed services and foreign relations. It's time for them to get the job done.
Shut the fuck up, Amy. Stop talking.
You know, it's really remarkable. And thank you for that, Colin. I needed to be reminded of just how close Amy Klobuchar is with one of the biggest warhawks in the House, which is Debbie Wasserman.
And I am, you know, I hate talking about like the physical stuff, but their hair is both so unfortunate that I feel like maybe that's why they can commiserate. Like, here's the thing: when I look at Amy Klobuchar, seriously, I look at her, and she's not like an unattractive person. She's really not. She's not unattractive, but she just looks so matronly. Like I feel like she needs.
Bill Maher's in love with her.
It's so gross. Yeah. If she needs a makeover, like to me, she is screaming for a makeover, but she needs to take her little war hawk mongering self and go preach that crap elsewhere. And again, if Joe is so cognizant and sharp, why isn't anybody filming that?
And
I agree with Jon Stewart.
And I have still maintained for the longest time, despite what you don't like my music or any other classic liberal has to say about Donald Trump and how he's the end-all be-all evil of our day. And the fact of the matter is, if you were to rewind the clock 10 years, maybe even we'd have to go back a little bit longer, even though I've always said that when it comes to war, The Democratic Party is infinitely worse than the Republicans. History has shown that most of the wars happen to start under Democrats, which is why George W. Bush, in particular, is the worst of the very worst, because he really started so much of what we're facing today.
And to transition into this,
yes,
one of the other things about W was that he thought it was just so cool that somebody had the opportunity to work three jobs.
Absolutely.
So,
because what would we do without if we had a 21st century economic bill of rights, we wouldn't have to worry about something.
As if the more the merrier.
Yes. And so the point is, with Amy Klobuchar, she is just rattling off the talking points that now are firmly set within the Democratic Party apparatus of war is good and we're going to keep pushing for it.
And Joe is sharp.
And Joe is sharp as attack, baby. Sharp as attack. He knows everything there is to know about anybody.
Yeah.
What war? Oh, okay. What wars did Democrats start? Where should I begin? Okay. So let's see. The Democrats started the Spanish-American War. They started World War I. They started World War II. They started Korea.
Well, they're going to say those are all defensive things.
Started Vietnam.
There's that.
They started...
What did Bill get us into?
Oh, I got us into Kosovo.
That was a nice one.
That was a nice one.
And wasn't he also responsible for some sort of like Somalian disaster?
George H.W. Bush did Iraq, but I got to tell you,
that was defensive at the time, and he didn't go further.
The Desert Storm, that may be the most clear-cut example of if there's no justification for war, it could always be fine. You always have another example, but that is incorrect. You can say that there were people, there were consultants. There was no combat action until the 1960s with the Gulf of Tonkin. That's where it began. That's where troops started getting deployed. That's where the draft began. Johnson is responsible for the war in Vietnam. Kennedy was trying to make sure that we didn't have a war in Vietnam, and we all know how that ended.
That's how you get.
That's, well, you know.
That's
anytime you stand in the way of the war machine, you get that. How many people know that George W. Bush is responsible for 2 wars and Barack Obama is responsible for 5? I don't know. But this is the world we live in. And so, unfortunately, the transition between the
I don't think it matters what party it is. What we're seeing is the natural transgression of capital and its ownership of the military-industrial complex and how that coincides with empire. It would be whoever's there. It's just happening exponentially. It doesn't matter what party they're in. They're all owned by the same corporation.
And that's what people need to understand, is that whoever is in control, and it's very easy to say that if Trump was in there right now, that the escalation in Gaza would be just as bad, if not worse, and that anybody who's on the GOP side would be having the same talking point saying, I'm totally great. I'm doing the right thing. This is what we have to do. It's all very possible, but you know what? That isn't a defense of what the Biden administration and people like Amy Klobuchar are doing and going on there and saying that Alexei Navalny's murder very likely was, that this is the reason why we must continue forever war. Okay. I'm not on board with that. And
so extrajudicial killings are warrants for other countries to take up arms against you. Because honestly, you better be really working on our shores and looking, who's coming up here. Because I got to tell you,
reviewing the micro-militarism of the end of the empire. It's true, because again, that's why you need. And as much as it pains me to say this, this is why you need situations like Alexei Navalny to happen, because you need whatever juice you can squeeze out of the lemon that you possibly can to convince people that his death is a result of Putin being a tyrant and we got to take him out.
And who's to say that we didn't kill him just to be able to say that?
That's no different than people assuming.
I don't know who kills who anymore. Honestly, it's just
like when they said Putin blew up the Nord Stream pipe.
Right.
It's like, really?
No.
Come on. Like at this point, you can't even get upset. You just got to say,
I don't believe.
Call it what it is. Forever war is profitable for a lot of people. And when you look at who is donating to candidates like Amy Klobuchar, you'll notice that there's a lot of people in there that are not very good.
There's a lot of warmongers.
Lots of that. But you know what I think is important? I think a 21st century economic bill.
We need one. We need one.
And if anybody can speak to that, it is friend of the show, friend of the late Norman Lear, and of course, a friend to labor if there ever was one. He is a professor at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. He is a cheesehead in more ways than one. Harvey Kaye, as always, welcome back to Generation Change.
I don't know how I'm going to follow your tirades. That's all I can say.
No need to try. I'm pretty.
But I'll tell you what. If I can help, I will diffuse you a little bit, Peter. So when did William McKinley become a Democrat who started the Spanish-American War?
Oh, it was McKinley. I apologize. I thought it started under Cleveland.
See, this is why I don't have these kinds of arguments, because I don't know.
Right. And the Spanish-American War is where Teddy made his bones. That's where he became the big. That's where he rode the moose.
He never rode a moose.
I know. I like to live in fantasy. The country's in a lot of trouble right now. How are things up in the great upper Midwest?
Other than cold.
Very cold.
Well, compared to Florida, cold. However, it's actually kind of nice. It was beautiful today. It was 40 degrees and sunny. It was gorgeous.
That's slightly above what you would.
I want you to know, I stepped out tonight and it was cold. And the only thing that means is that I don't have to put on the air conditioner in the studio.
Well, that's refreshing.
That's cold here.
Well, I was down in Florida for 2 weeks. You may recall back in December, we were there for 2 weeks, the end of January. And the first week was chilly by Florida standards, but it was great. And the next week the next set of days were just gorgeous. And it's such a shame that all that good weather is in a state governed by shit.
Yeah, I know. But it's going to be underwater. If that makes you feel any better, everything south of Lake Okeechobee will be underwater at some point. I mean, not in your lifetime or my lifetime, but it's going to happen. So Florida will eventually basically be cut off.
Yeah, well, we have the weirdest winter, although it's very easily understood given everything we know nowadays. We've hardly had snow up here in Wisconsin. We had one storm and that was it. Okay. Yeah. No, it's really very strange.
But there's nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Well, who was the guy who brought the snowball into Congress and there's not global warming because it's
Inhofe, one of the worst senators that ever existed.
No.
Inhofe is I don't know how many GOPers still exist that are not just the true believers, but the ones who Inhofe was doing revival shit in Africa.
Well, none of them seem to be. I don't hear many of them fighting about climate anymore. They just have us distracted with so much other shit that you're not looking at what they're doing.
That's part of it.
So Harvey, what's been going on with you? How is it going selling the 21st Century Bill of Rights? Have you got any takers? Anybody that's willing to carry the banner for the presidential nomination?
Okay, well, I know you were not a fan, but Marianne obviously ran her campaign based on the Economic Bill of Rights that Alan and I composed. And there are folks around the country. The thing that I'm really fascinated by is what's going on in West Virginia. Most people may not know that. Progressives within the Democratic Party have pretty much taken over the Democratic Party in West Virginia. And they, on the executive board, they have embraced the executive board. They have yet to do a full-scale convention kind of thing, but they've embraced the Economic Bill of Rights, and which to me was a real breakthrough because Massachusetts had embraced the Economic Bill of Rights we composed already. California was moving towards it, but a very unpredictable state. They at the last minute they had other things on their agenda. Even the Arizona Democrats have been embracing it of late. So there's definitely activity going on around the states. In fact, I'm having a conversation this week with a fellow I haven't talked to in some time, who's a longtime state senator in Massachusetts. And I have a feeling he probably wants to discuss where we go from here to advance the Economic Bill of Rights. So there is all that activity. However, the Democrats really don't want to know from any of it right now at the national level. Yeah. Okay. I mean, as we know, they're all doing their damnedest. They're revved up for Joe Biden. And that includes, even the progressives on the left of the party. So we don't expect much to happen during the course of this year. But I can tell you that, and I was quite serious when I wrote a piece last fall Alan and I wrote it, but I took the lead on this one. And my argument is that, democracy in this country is really in trouble. I mean, we are in deep shit, and it's not going to necessarily, the Democrats who I've talked to inside the Beltway types, they think this is like one of the finest presidents ever. They just are absolutely. And I don't want to get into the question of war and stuff. I want to stick just right now to the domestic stuff.
Yeah.
And seriously speaking, sure, he's been better than a whole host of folks, including, the man he served as vice president. However, it remains the case that they just don't know how to turn all of that into politics. They just, for example, and the best example I can give you is many of these initiatives, which are kind of watered down versions of the original plans that they had, will make a difference, but they're not going to make a difference in the vast majority of people's lives. And there's this bullshit going around that inequality is being reduced in America. But then figures came out the other day that said, in fact, the same wealth, accumulation is taking place. So, frankly, this is a very depressing time for me politically, because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. How's that?
No, I hear you. And for me, it's interesting that even the idea that you're having to go, or that somebody would have to sell this idea to Democratic parties is so strange to me. Yeah. I don't understand. Like, that should be the platform for all the Democratic parties, because that should just be what the platform is. So it's so strange to me that you're having to sell that. Like, in my mind, even coming into a place like Florida, that's something that, yes, our state party should have that as, like, what difference should it make that it's not necessarily going to be effective in our legislature right now? That should still be
right.
The platform of the state party. Well, that's what I understand. Why is this so difficult for people to understand?
I think basically the Democrats for many years now have been afraid of their own voters. I think they're afraid.
I don't agree with that.
Here's what I mean by that. We know the degree to which the Democratic Party is basically dependent on big corporate donors.
Now, yeah.
Okay. So if, on the one hand, this has been going on for quite some time.
Yeah.
In the course of my lifetime, at least. Okay. But it really is the case that, on the one hand, they do not want to antagonize those folks.
Correct.
They just won't do it, on the one hand. And on the other hand, in order to appeal to working people, they have to get serious about doing the very things that will antagonize those donors that they've got. So when I say they're afraid, I think they're afraid that they actually might enthuse working people if they start talking about an economic bill of rights. Because seriously speaking, the polls have shown, we actually had a poll run this past year on the question of economic bill of rights and to what extent voters want it. And the majority of Americans want the very things that are proposed in our economic bill of rights. They're not alien concepts. No. And so you ask yourself, well, why aren't the Democrats embracing it? They don't want to antagonize their donors. And I think they're really afraid that by speaking to their fellow citizens and sort of, look, I don't know what kind of proof Democrats need for the very simplest of things when Florida approved a referendum for a $15 an hour minimum wage a few years ago, right? I mean, that's the minor thing. And keep in mind that that's what Bernie wanted to include at the very outset of the Biden administration. And the Democratic leadership couldn't get behind it. Now, you could say it's only mentioned in cinema, but the Democratic leadership could not. They look.
But don't you ultimately think that that's because you can't both represent the servant and the master at the same time?
No, exactly. And they've chosen to serve the master.
Yes.
Okay. But it's also the case that there are people inside the Democratic Party who have no excuse for not fervently coming out in favor of an economic bill of rights. You cannot have something called a progressive caucus.
Well, Have you seen some of the Chantel?
I have.
Brown
I mean,
is in the Progressive Caucus.
I have. Look, I mean,
come on.
I mean, look, no joke. I mean, I still can't get over the Nina Turner campaigns. Okay, it's just
the Congressional Progressive Caucus is not real. Like, no. I mean, it does literally exist, but not as a real means of progressive action or policy in the party. Like, it doesn't do that.
Yeah. But then here's another thought. I'm all over the place with this right now because I'm not thinking straight. Because it's been this is the strangest of political times ever in my life. Strangest.
It's gonna keep getting stranger.
This
just getting started. Yes.
So, look, how is it possible, for example, that the Democrats would not even entertain a discussion about primaries?
Because they don't care whether or not they beat Donald Trump. They proved to us in 2016 that they preferred Trump to Bernie. They've proven that. And I sit here now and I look at them bitching about RFK and he's this. They could have had him as his candidate. And you know what? He probably could beat Trump. And the thing is that they could have had that as their candidate. So they chose to not have,
right. But you won't get me to, I won't talk about Bobby Kennedy Jr. Come on. I'm just not, no way. Absolutely not.
I mean, I don't support him. It's not my candidate. But if you look across the country at people who won't pick between Joe or Trump, there's a ton of people that would go with Bobby.
Yes, absolutely. Which is also to show people, and also testifies to the fact that neither candidate, Americans don't want either one of these.
No,
or they just don't.
No.
And
but I do think that there will be a difference this time. And what I mean by that is they were shell-shocked, obviously, that Trump won in 2016. But I think they saw it as an opportunity to raise a lot of money, which they did. And they were able to get in a slew of, additional neoliberal candidates. So we're some, decent representatives that were able to break through, but we all see how that's unfolded over the last few years. I don't think it'll be the same this time. I think if Trump gets in again, I think the Democratic Party machine's attempt to fundraise off of him being in there again, I don't think it's going to have quite the same effect. I think there will be enough people this time that will say it's one thing to be completely caught off guard when he wins the first time. It's another thing entirely to go through what we've went through over the past several years, and he gets in again. And that, to me, is a reflection of just how broken the system really is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. On that, I absolutely agree with you. I really do. And look, everyone celebrate. I just love the media representation. So you may recall last year here in the state of Wisconsin, we had a major Supreme Court judicial race.
Yeah.
Okay. And the progressives won. And thus the Supreme Court returns to a liberal majority. And the first thing that needed doing, really, because you have to wait for these cases to come before you, was hopefully to finally address the absolutely absurd anti-small d and capital D Democratic apportionment that the Republicans imposed on this state.
Right.
That had little relation between the citizenry and the distribution of the districts. Well, today, the governor signed the bill into law in the state that came through, that the new apportionment. Okay. But as one of my former students and some of my colleagues said, the Democrats never missed an opportunity to grab defeat out of the jaws of victory.
They cannot help themselves
because this is a fairer apportionment. But the point is, they could have literally taken charge of it, the Democrats, and set themselves up for a major victory in the next elections, and they just didn't do it. Do they actually imagine if the Republicans come back, they're going to try to get it. They're going to fuck over the Democrats no end. Okay, next chance they get it.
But Harvey, that has to really make you think that maybe this is just a game that's being
that's the thing. Like, at what point do we look at it and be like, clearly they don't really want to win? For example, in Florida, where everyone thinks, oh, we're just so red here. Well, we don't really know that entirely, other than our legislature has been commandeered by a very small group of red people, but the state and the majority of the people in the state are not that. And our Democrats are so feckless that there were about 20 potential seats, and they didn't even bother to put candidates in those races. So when people look at us from the national media, like, oh my God, that 20 seats is significant. And that was just one cycle. And so they don't even try.
I think Florida is a great example of exactly why the Democratic Party at almost every level is a failure, because it doesn't represent workers the way that it is. It is a workers' party in name only. And the reason that is proof positive is because of the fact that DeSantis won re-election in the biggest landslide in the history of the state. And then when he attempts to go nationwide, they're like, oh, get the hell out of here.
Right. We don't want that.
So that's a reflection, not that he's so damn popular in the state, even though he is popular in Florida. At the same time, it's a reflection of how weak and disorganized, maybe deliberately, that the Democratic Party is in the state of Florida, as far as I know.
One of my best predictions was that DeSantis could not win outside of Florida.
And you were true. And the thing about him, though, is he's not I don't think it's necessarily that he's popular. And remember, low bar. We had Rick Scott.
You're Democrats for some time leave a lot. Oh, jeez.
Right. So we're when I look at DeSantis versus Rick Scott, I do prefer DeSantis to Rick Scott. I do. And but how absurd is that's what we're looking at is like an improvement.
And it's the same bar that's set when somebody says that Joe Biden's the best president of my lifetime. It's like, compared to what?
Compared to whom?
Yeah, compared to, you can't even get the bare minimum of things that you absolutely need. And remember, the precedent was set in the first 100 days of his presidency when he threw out the words, the parliamentarian says I can't do it. It's like, that's the end of the presidency.
Yes. You know what? If there was one moment that said it all, thank you for reminding me of that was it. My mind always goes back to the $15 an hour minimum wage thing, because I could not get over the fact that there were eight Democratic senators voted against it, two of whom were from Delaware, right? One of whom we know was mentored by Joe Biden. I mean, just absolutely astounding. What can I say about it? But I want to add one other thing. One of the reasons it was depressing in part to be in Sarasota, although I didn't allow it to ruin my vacation, is that my university was part of a generation of universities. Here, UW Green Bay, that was.
Yeah.
Was part of a generation of universities set up around the country that were meant to be innovative and interdisciplinary and, not at all in a traditional higher education structure. And is the same generation as New College in Sarasota.
Right.
And this is not a great metaphor, but it's hard to think otherwise. They basically raped that school, DeSantis, and that was a really fine, and it was a public liberal arts college, a public honors liberal arts college. It was just a fabulous little institution, and now it's just whacked. Just like smacked around. To me, it was a particular tragedy because it was part of the same generation as mine. And that's what they've done to higher education. The Republicans just love going after higher education. I mean, we pay so much attention to so many things because so many things are underway. The assault it never stops. It just doesn't stop. And the Democrats don't, even when they win, they don't try to reverse the tide. They just don't
win hard enough. They don't fight because they don't really care.
The fact of the matter is, in this state, I can assure you, whether it's down here or in other places, are the Republicans more in bed with the charter school industrial complex? Yes.
Oh, for sure.
But the Democrats are with them too.
Well, the Democrats don't fight it. You know what? It depends. Florida, our Democrats in our state legislature, a lot of them that we know, they are really solid people that are fighting the good defense, and they live on defense, and that just sucks. Like they don't have time to be putting forward things when they're fighting to just not have the dictionary banned from our public schools. You know what I mean? Like, these people live on defense here. So it is kind of pathetic, but just overall nationwide, the Democrats, to me, at least the people in power positions, not the regular people that vote Democrat, the people in power positions, they're very comfortable with the way things are, because at the end of the day, they all answer to capital. So why it doesn't matter to them.
The other problem that we have, and I'm sure that you've noticed this, whether through your support of Marianne or just overall looking at the landscape of what's going on, this is the weakest incumbent since Jimmy Carter. And it's not up for debate. Like, he's that weak. And when a presidential incumbent is that weak, you don't pretend like he's doing well. If you are a killer, which is what you're supposed to be in the political arena, you go for the throat and tell them, you want us to be out there supporting your ass to get reelected? Here's the list of demands. This is what you're going to do. And if you don't do it, since you are the chief executive of the free world,
we're going to go ask the parliamentarian.
We have the authority. And that's where the 21st century economic bill of rights comes into play.
Well, seriously speaking, again, I don't want to go on to the war question. I was thinking strict to a domestic agenda. Okay.
Yeah, I actually have a question for you domestically, but yes. Okay.
I thought to myself, okay, when Bernie and the squad jumped to endorse Biden, it made no demands,
none
whatsoever, on the domestic agenda. And I don't know if they even, nothing, absolutely nothing. And I thought, wow,
yeah.
What
They're not fighting, and that's what makes me sad. It isn't that I would expect everybody that has my viewpoint sitting in Congress to be effective. I get that. But when it doesn't even seem like they're trying, the fact that Alex is out there plugging Joe, and it's really embarrassing, and it's ruining their credibility. And it's just very unfortunate.
And if you remember back when it was clear that they were, putting the full court press and basically, knocking Bernie out again and getting behind Joe. And before COVID took over, you saw the statistics, 80% likely Trump is going to get reelected, which was exceptionally high. And now you're realizing that the reason he lost was because of how he handled a once in a century pandemic. It is a fool's errand to think that this incumbent president is going to win again.
I don't see how he can win.
And because of that, the best thing you can do is force his hand and say, you're not canceling 5% of student debt, which I don't even think it's that amount. It's actually a little less than that. And they're out there touting it like it's the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Go away with your means tested shit.
You can cancel it all.
Right. Means testing is
exactly. That's austerity politics. It's the same thing. The amount of money that's going to be accumulated back through interest alone is going to make up for whatever he canceled anyway. So you've got canceling student debt, you've got decriminalization of cannabis, you can expand healthcare. Yes, you can do that, including to places like the next heir apparent, Gretchen Whitmer in the state of Michigan, because what's happening in Flint is also happening in Kalamazoo, and all of these places are, without question, like East Palestine, they should be able to get universal health care, which has happened before in Montana in places that have been contaminated by the environment. Again, it's not the solution, but it's one that should absolutely be employed. And these are things that the commander-in-chief has the authority to do. And no one even thinks to push him on anything. No pushing whatsoever. In fact, keep your fucking mouth shut and get out there and talk about how great Joe is.
Say how sharp he is.
Because that's what's going to stop Trump in November. It's not. No. And you know what? Everyone was convinced getting into this election that more votes were going to get peeled from Trump to go over to RFK. Because of the fact that the Democrats pulled this shit again, more of the votes are now breaking from Biden going over to RFK. So congratulations, you played yourselves like the fools you are. And so I feel terrible for this country, knowing where we're going. But what can we do to get the message out there so that whatever ultimately unfolds over the next 9 months, that we are prepared to take the reins and continue to build this labor movement? Because as I've said to Jen, as I say to anybody, the only thing that Biden has truly done in his presidency that I would hang my hat on is the NLRB. There has been movement in the right direction.
And not enough. Again, not enough.
Not enough. Yes, and I agree with you. The tragedy is that he was very, very slow on it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Too slow.
I mean, if the NLRB was to be effective, it needed to have a major investment in it. And that took a long time to start coming. And I'm not even sure now it's actually come. Okay.
It wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for Shawn Fain.
Well, and I would also point out that he also screwed the railroad workers, which is
Of course.
outside the
No,
NLRB.
and that, right. And then, and also, let's understand something. Right now, it's the two big things of this year have been where unions went on strike or threatened. In the Teamsters, it was a threatened strike. Sorry,
Right.
It was a threatened strike. Okay. And so it's not like that's not necessarily NLRB. The organizing question remains. We haven't seen major breakthroughs at Amazon.
No.
I have a complimentary copy to the National Review. This goes for some time now. Okay. And so I read the right as I not as much as I used to in the past because it's too predictable now. But there was a piece in the recent National Review and it said, actually, the working class numbers in unions is not growing. It's not growing. Okay. Which means there isn't, it doesn't match the fact that workers want in unions. But the fact is, if you can't break Amazon, if you can't break Starbucks, store by store Starbucks, you realize how long that would take?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There has to be, if showing up on a picket line is like tokenism. That's bullshit.
Well, he was there for a whole 12 minutes. And, I think I know what you're saying, like that it is kind of all small, but that's the whole point of what a strong executive could do is have forced their hands in a lot of different ways. So
Absolutely.
all of these things could be being handled differently. And that is something that we've talked about would be different if Bernie was president.
Yes, absolutely.
One
other thing. Because I know you'll kick me out of here soon.
No, we won't.
Right now, it's thrilling to see the UAW. It's thrilling to see Shawn Fain. It is. But you know what? But I'm not fully happy. My happiness is not unbounded on Shawn Fain. I think, here's the story. In 1944, when FDR announced or pronounced the vision, the promise of an economic Bill of Rights, labor, both the AFL and the CIO, which then were two separate federations, one the trades, the other industrial unions, they both rallied, especially the CIO, and launched massive, in the CIO's case, massive national campaigns, not just to reelect FDR, but specifically to promote the economic Bill of Rights idea. And it was a national progressive civic organization was formed with celebrities and everyone else, again, to back that. There were rallies, like in New York, Robert F. Wagner, the great senator from New York, he spoke to like a million people in favor of the economic Bill of Rights. Now, ultimately, the Republicans blocked everything after World War II because in 46 they won the House. Okay, and Taft-Hartley is a prime example. Well, so here's the question I've been posing to my friends in labor, high and low, is why won't labor? And by the way, I'm in the labor movement, so when I say my friends in labor, meaning the people I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Why doesn't labor, UAW, Teamsters, all across the board, why don't they say they want to see an economic Bill of Rights? Because if they're going to go beyond the confines of their own union, it's all well and good for young people and folks like us to be enthused by these figures. But if they're going to start appealing to folks who want in unions but aren't quite sure what unions really will do for the country, this is the time for labor to step forward. If the president's not going to do it, and we sure as hell know he's not going to, if major Senate figures are not going to do it, Bernie hasn't mentioned it since 2020, I bet, then why the hell don't my brothers and sisters in the labor movement make an issue of this now?
That's a good question.
That's a great
Why
point.
don't they?
That's a
But
great
I have
point.
a policy question for you. I have a
Okay.
question for you. This is a
Yeah.
21st century Bill of Rights question. Talk to me about housing. Talk to me about what that was supposed to have been like. Like, had that been like put through as the whole package had meant to be put through?
Well, it was meant to. Okay, so the Economic Bill of Rights is an economic bill of rights. It's not specific policy proposals.
Right. No. I understand.
But when FDR proposed it, everyone had a pretty good understanding what he meant, because back in the 30s, during the New Deal years, the FDR administration was serious. There were problems with the way they pursued it. Okay, in the South, you couldn't integrate housing. In the North, you couldn't integrate housing. Okay, but the fact was that there was substantial work on the housing question in many places. So the idea was, if you're going to move on in that regard, then in fact, if every American has a right to a decent, comfortable home, then you would make that a primary objective. Housing. Okay, you create. In 65, 66, when A. Philip Randolph created the Freedom Budget, which was literally drawn from the vision of the Economic Bill of Rights, he had in there exactly the kinds of things in policy proposal form that FDR had laid out in a more visionary-like way. Okay, so I mean, to my mind, imagine a massive housing boom in this country.
Right.
I mean, just imagine. By the way, massive housing boom creates massive numbers of jobs at a living wage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
But the point is that housing is part of the concept of the 21st century Bill of Rights.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes, sorry. Right.
So
I've been here before, so I didn't think I had to repeat.
So my big issues out of that, I'm always are for me, it's healthcare, housing, and jobs. And it isn't that I don't think education is important, but I just I feel like the idea of a federal job guarantee is something that
living wage.
But okay. But I think the best way to have a living wage is through doing a federal jobs guarantee.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. The line in the Economic Bill of Rights is, I didn't pull it out because I've done this. I didn't want to.
You were saying you're opposed to it, that you don't like a federal jobs guarantee.
I do want a federal job. Absolutely.
Yeah, add a living wage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Sorry.
Yeah.
We've been here before. It was only Peter talking to me that time.
Yeah. No. I know. This is what. Yeah. Well, that was, and look, that's basically what they're gonna try to pull some crap like that at this convention and swap out Joe when he has to be wheeled off into his sunset.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I've heard that scenario from various quarters.
So
tell me this: who are they going to?
Newsom.
Okay, so you think that do you think they can get away? Seriously, this is a serious question.
Yeah.
Do you think the Democrats can get away with shunting aside?
Yes.
Okay, you know who I'm talking about.
yes.
Right? Okay. I'm not. I think Harris is a loser.
I think that is definitely one of the reasons why they have that Joe has been forced to basically be stuck in this position again, is because they can't do that. But I think at the end of the day, at a convention, that they can do whatever they want. And her numbers are worse than Joe's.
Yeah. You have to remember.
So what how would you wouldn't be able to sell that?
So this is going to be, again, it's like history repeating itself all over again. This is going to be a throwback not only to 1968, but 1944 as well. Because at the time, they knew that FDR was almost assuredly not going to make it through his fourth term. And so they had no choice. They could not run the risk. Again, they already dealt with this when Teddy became president in 1901, and they were not going to run the risk of another, you want to talk about a Teddy Roosevelt progressive on steroids. That's what Henry Wallace would have been if he became the commander in chief. So at the convention, yes, FDR was staying at the top of the ticket, but the vice president was getting
well. And the fact is, he was already sick and he wasn't there to fight for him.
Yeah. And I do think that is true. I also think that it is very likely that if Biden is going to step away, they're going to go through not just that process with the presidential nominee, but the vice presidential nominee.
So too.
So they're not going to run. They're not going to take that chance.
No.
So I think the odds of Biden getting bumped and Harris getting bumped as well is very likely.
Here's the thing: nobody will care. Nobody will care.
Not really. At this point, this is all, and this is why it's a failed experiment, because this entire year is going to be devoting to saying, don't vote for Trump. That's not a winning message.
No, it's not
And
gonna
as
work.
I've said before, there's a reason why the incumbent usually wins, because they are the commander in chief. They have the tools at their disposal to do things to actually help people
Not
in
this
this country,
week. Not
to
this
ensure.
weekend.
Yeah.
Let me say something also about why I think Trump can win. Because it's not because Trump is a winner.
No.
No, I'm a total winner. How dare you say that? I'm not a loser.
Trump can win because
I'm a
my
winner.
theory is that too many people are going to stay home.
Yes, that's definitely part of it too.
Okay, it won't be because of third party necessarily. Although if Bobby Kennedy is in there, I have no idea what's going to happen there.
The polling numbers show him being.
Carter,
right.
Reagan beat Carter because people they just despise Carter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was an abysmal president.
And so is Trump, and so is Joe. So we're choosing between two abysmal characters, but the one sitting there right now is the one that is now genocide Joe.
The reason why Bernie's run, especially in 2016, is one that still perplexes me to no end, and why it's amazing how they all end up becoming these careerists in the political arena rather than being the radicals that they claimed that they were going to be to actually exert the type of change that was possible in this country. Bernie proved that if you have the message and you resist the corporate special interest money, you could become a powerhouse like that.
You can do it, but then you have to go further. My question for you also, Harvey, is have you spoken with Shama at all about like getting unions to push forward the 21st century Bill of Rights?
Have I talked to who?
Shama Sawant.
Oh, from Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
No, I haven't, but I've should.
Because if what she's basically doing is coordinating unions, that might not be. And Nima was doing something regarding helping unions too.
Yeah, I'm on the board of that one.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, I was with her from the beginning on this one. We Are Somebody, it's called.
Yeah.
And she's always ready to advance and embrace the Economic Bill of Rights. And when we're having a meeting very soon of the board is interesting. I mean, it's like Chris Smalls and a whole host of folks.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I support the Economic Bill of Rights.
No, I know you do. I'm glad you brought it up. Although it's funny, I thought we were going to talk Norman Lear tonight.
No, we are definitely going to finish with Norman Lear. That way we don't get
time.
We have time.
We have a little.
You want to chat
We have
about
a little
Norman
time.
Lear because we didn't really get to last
The point
time.
is to say,
After we've gone through all that, it seems like an afterthought. And I thought we were going to do a conversation about that.
the thing about Norman Lear is that he represents a time that once existed in Hollywood where it wasn't, he really was, they talk a lot about how the transition that occurred during the 60s, but mostly during the 70s, where the big studios did not have the systemic control over creative content that they once did. And you were able to take chances on different types of stories, different types of constructs as far as a show was concerned. You know, All in the Family was one of several that sprung up during that time that was just completely unheard of. They hadn't done anything like that before.
And what's amazing is you would think that society progresses, that you would see that kind of thing now, but now you could never have that.
That's the thing. It's not like it couldn't sell, but the problem is those messages are working class strengthening messages, and the people in charge don't want that. And the second they could get that power away from those individuals and create this mindless shit that they now throw out there today.
Can you imagine Archie Bunker on TV?
I have to tell you that when I came to know Norman, I kept my mouth shut about one thing. And that was that, keep in mind, I was already, I guess I was in grad school when his shows were really big in the 70s.
Yeah.
And I felt that All in the Family was not I thought it was a great show for sort of breaking barriers on television. But I had serious doubts that it was serving the cause of the labor left that I believe in. Okay. serious doubts about that. That in some ways, the image, like a lot of people just really liked Archie for his reactionary attitudes.
Yeah.
Richard, when Norman told me when he met Richard Nixon had said to him, I don't understand why you people don't actually like Archie Bunker. Something like that. I mean, it's really.
Well,
I had an affinity for Archie. Well, you know what though? But like my poppy was kind of like a Jewish version of Archie Bunker. He basically made fun of everybody, but not the Jews. So it was kind of like yeah. So I mean, it's very familiar to me.
But I have, for what it's worth, assuming we don't ever come back to the subject, I just want to make this clear that I absolutely adored Norman Lear, and we almost immediately, he contacted me. That was the fascinating thing. I mean, if I had called Norman Lear, he wouldn't have taken the phone call. But what it was is he saw me on Bill Moyer. My first time on Bill Moyer's show was I was doing Thomas Paine with Bill Moyers, and I got this. I came back to Green Bay, and it was Sunday afternoon, and it was the NFC Championship. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember. It was the Packers versus the New York Giants, and it was Favre's last.
There it is. Now he knows exactly what you're talking about. You said Giants. Okay.
Okay. So
that was a great night for me.
so at the halftime of the football game, my wife came up here to the computer where I'm sitting now, and she shouted down, "You have an email from Norman Lear." And I said, "Wow, is Norman still alive?" That kind of thing. And he was only 85 at the time, but
right.
I hadn't heard of him in that for some years. And he sent this email because he saw me on his best buddy Bill Moyer's show, and he never saw Bill smile with a guest as much as he did when I was on with Bill. And he said, "I have something I really need to talk to you about. If I don't hear from you, I'll get your number from Bill, and I'll call you." And I didn't have Norman Lear's number, so I didn't act on it. And a couple of days later, he called, and we were on the phone for about an hour, and he didn't even give me the details of what he wanted me to work on with him. All he did was he just wanted to talk, to schmooze, right? And I'll never forget, there's these moments with Norman. He said, he dropped the F-bomb. He said, "fuck," but something like that. And then he stopped. And he said, "Oh, wait, is that okay with you?" And I said, "It's okay by me." He goes, "Good. You'll be like my nephew." It'll be that kind of thing. and then at the end of this hour-long conversation, he said, "I'm going to have to set it up. You're going to have to come out to LA because I need you on this project." And it still didn't give me a full picture of this project. So he said, "I'd call you tomorrow, but my wife is demanding we take a vacation. So I'll call you next." It was like the following week in February. Sorry, Mike. If I bore you, forgive me. It's just
No.
Today. And in fact, before, I don't know if you saw it, I sent you,
Yes.
I texted you
Yes.
pictures of Norman and me together. A couple of times we spent a good bit of time together. Anyhow, so he had this TV producer call me a week later. By the way, everything I'm telling you was surreal to me.
Right.
Okay. Because however much my circles in academia were pretty well established, and I could travel anywhere, in academic circles with what I do, and people might recognize what I accomplished, nobody in Hollywood would have paid attention to anything.
Right.
So this producer calls, and he's going on and on about this project. And all I knew at this moment was that it was titled Remix America. And this was in the early days. Remember, this is 2008. I should have made that clear.
Okay.
And this was just YouTube itself, I believe, was just taking off around that time.
Yeah, it had taken off at that point.
Okay. Well, but no, the way they put it is Norman wants to create a YouTube-like website so that young people, anybody, but especially high school students and college students and professors and teachers can create their own videos of social commentary. That was it. That he was launching this thing, Remix America. So finally, we're about 2 hours into this conversation. I still hadn't didn't know what my job was going to be in any of this. Maybe an hour in. This guy, Fred Graver, that was his name. Do you remember there used to be a show called, was it my favorite weekend, something like that?
I don't know.
You guys, it was a thing on, it was MTV, and then there was the
VH1.
VH1. I think he was a producer with VH1, et cetera, et cetera. So anyhow, he says, by the way, can you fly out to LA? This was Tuesday. Can you fly out to LA on Thursday? And I said, oh, I mean, I don't usually work like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I happened to be on a fellowship from the NEH or somebody that year. So my time was more flexible, but I was in the middle of a book project. And he said, tomorrow, Norman or Marilyn will call you with the details. That's all I knew. I was supposed to fly out for the weekend. So the next day, I get a call from Marilyn, his assistant, Norman's assistant, and she explained that they were arranging a first-class flight. And by the way, at that point in time, first-class travel for me was a very rare, and I'd have had to be bumped by accident.
Right.
And I'm thinking, wow, this is really pretty cool. And then Norman calls. And Norman calls and says, I want you to know that tomorrow night you and I are going to meet with will.i.am.
Okay.
And I was silent. And he said, do you know who will.i.am is?
And you had no idea, did you?
I had no fucking idea.
Of course you didn't.
Black Eyed Peas.
Black Eyed Peas.
Okay. No, see, Black Eyed Peas I knew, but I didn't know any one of the personalities in it other than Fergie, maybe, because she had a hit song at that point. Right? So, and he said a whole series of funny things that at the moment seemed really funny. Right now they wouldn't. He goes like, just wear your best dress. That's how Norman put it. Just wear your best dress. And I said, well, I hope a sweater and a blazer be fine. He goes, you'll look like my son if you do that. I said, well, that's going to be the case. So so the next morning I got up very early, got out to the airport, and my trip, I was supposed to get there at noon to LA, but the flights got all screwed up for a whole bunch of reasons. They had to send me through Denver. I mean, it was like over and over again. So I didn't get until 4 p.m. Now, when I was leaving that morning, my wife said to me, no blonde.
I'll put that in like a corner spot.
You have to do it.
You got to drop that, Colin.
Yeah. My wife said to me, no blondes, no Coke. So I land and I'm at the airport and I have no idea where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do. And I called Marilyn and I said, how do I get to wherever Norman needs me? She said, the buyer from the house, the young woman who's responsible for keeping the house stocked with everything, she's going to come and pick you up. I said, well, how do I know what she looks like? He goes, she's blonde and very attractive.
So strike one.
So she picks me up. We get into her VW and we're driving now, and we're halfway to Beverly Hills at this point from the airport. And Norman calls me and he says, Harvey, where the fuck are you? Okay. I've had this meeting, all these people are eager to meet you. And I said, Norman, you send a blonde to the airport and you expect me to come and show up for you? He laughed and I started laughing. So I get off the phone and this young woman who was like 24 at the most, 23, she says to me, what's so funny? And I told him, I said, well, my wife told me before I got on the plane, no blondes, no Coke. She said, oh, did you want some Coke?
That's such an LA thing.
That is such an LA thing.
It was like, whoa, you know. So, and thus began, so that night, Norman and I go head out and we meet up with 2 of his young assistants, these people for dinner.
It's so fun.
And the funniest part is these 2 young people said to me, who do you want for president? And I said, well, honestly, I don't like either one. Okay.
Right.
But if I had to choose, don't laugh. At that moment, if you had to choose, I said, I think I might vote for Hillary. That's what I said. Okay. I mean, the whole idea was, I swore I'd never vote for another Clinton, but I threw that out mostly because I wanted to antagonize these 2 young assistants. So then Norman and I head out from the dinner to go. We're on our way with one young woman to it was a Black Eyed Peas fundraise. They were raising monies for their foundation. That was it. And we get there and Norman says, here's what we're going to do, Harvey. We're going to go on the red carpet, you and I, And then at the end, we're not going in. You and I are breaking, and we're going to go back. We're going to go see will.i.am in the dressing room. So we go on this. By the way, it wasn't a red carpet. It was a green carpet in honor of the environment. Okay. But it was plastic. How's that? Classic LA. So, and when we're hit the end of the line, people think, well, I must be Norman's close buddy because it's the two of us together. These journalists swarm around me and start asking me questions about Norman. And I said, sorry, I'm not talking. So Norman, so what's funny was I had called my nephew the night before, who at that point was like 13 or 14. And I told him I was going to meet will.i.am. And he said, oh, buy a CD and get his autograph. So I hadn't done that because I didn't have time. But Norman and I are heading towards the dressing rooms. And Norman said, oh, by the way, don't ask for his autograph. As far as he knows, you're more important than he is. I said, oh, okay. And so we get there, and Norman says to Will, he says, this is the most important intellectual you will ever meet. and Will, who's got a boot on his foot, had hurt his foot. He says, well, he says, but can I still hug you? That was it. Will says, can I still hug you? I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And we held this kind of meeting thing, and then we leave. And it just was the start of this. I could spend literally an hour, and you don't have the time. So on the Friday, Norman was sponsoring a conference at USC, University of Southern California, where he actually underwrites a center there on politics and entertainment, although the center is located in Beverly Hills. And so for that day, I was Norman Lear. I had this badge on because Norman didn't go to the conference. But it was really an amazing group. So there were lots of people from the entertainment industry. And then, do you know the name Lawrence Lessig?
Yes, I do. Yes.
And he was one of the star lawyers that was there to talk about copyrights and all that kind of stuff, because the whole question of Remix America was, what can you use? What can't you use in creating these videos and so on? And I was exhausted. Oh, by the way, the funniest part for me was I had no idea where we were in Brentwood. I had no idea. I was in the gate. They gave me the gatehouse. They had an estate, a gatehouse, a guest house, and the main house. And I'm in the gatehouse. And at night, I couldn't tell where I was. And at 4 a.m, I woke up because that would have been like my time to wake up back in the East. And I went out on this little balcony in the bedroom I was in, and I looked down, and the sun, and I looked down, and I saw lights, and I realized that I was like on a precipice. And first thought I had as a Midwesterner, New Yorker and Midwesterner, was, holy fuck, if there's an earthquake, I'm done.
Right.
I'm literally done. But then I thought, what the hell? So I started calling everyone I knew in the East to tell them, you're not going to believe where I am right now. I'm with Norman Lear for the weekend, because I hadn't had it. It was, everything moved so quickly. I hadn't told anyone. And they just like, their minds were like, what the fuck? What are you doing with Norman Lear? So that night I get picked up from the conference, and we go to this house in Hancock Park, I think is the neighborhood.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it was a dinner party, which included, it was like 10 people, a dinner party that included the head of NBC Entertainment. And so this was very surreal. And by the way, seriously, there were stories from that evening, but I honestly don't think you have the time for me to.
No.
But then I'll jump ahead to the next day, Saturday. We get up, and I always would go up to the main house, as I called it, to have breakfast with Norman. He was always up early. We'd have breakfast together. He had a salad every morning for breakfast. And at that point, let me make it clear, at that point, Howard Schultz and Starbucks did not have the bullshit reputation they have now, because everyone used to talk about Starbucks being the one sort of, that Howard Schultz was providing medical.
Right. It was the good place.
Right. It was a good place. And so Norman and Howard Schultz were friends. And every morning he would have someone deliver him from Starbucks his coffee in the morning. Right. So we're sitting there, and Norman says, we're going to a meeting. First, you and I, you're here to help me write a speech. He was getting a big award from, used to be an organization Robert Borisage headed. campaign, not the CAP, Campaign for American Progress. It was the Campaign for America's Future. That was it. And he was supposed to be getting an award, and he wanted me to help him write the speech, which I did. It was a blast to do that. And then he said, we're going to what's the neighborhood? You guys, I know you're in Florida, not LA, but if you think about the Hollywood sign and go down the hill, what's the neighborhood right below that? Do you know?
West Hollywood.
West Hollywood.
Okay, so that neighborhood, which is a lot of small houses down there, actually not unlike my own house here in Green Bay. And we were going to a meeting of Norman's, the head of Norman's sort of foundation, the TV producer that was leading the charge on this thing. And was it just the three of us? Well, four of us and Norman. So the four of us. And on the way there, we're pulling out onto the highway. And Norman said, later in the day, I'm going to give you a personal tour of Hollywood. I said, oh, great. That's cool. So we're pulling onto the highway, and we've had a fairly detailed set of conversations already about Norman and me being friends and all that kind of stuff. And Norman said to me, I want to give you a gift. I said, shit, this is a gift. I mean, this is my first time in LA, really.
Right.
And then he said, no, but I want to give you a gift. And I want to give what I want to do is I want to give you $10,000.
It's nice.
Wow.
It's a nice
Well,
gift.
that was like, like, whew. And I said, you don't have to give me anything. He said, no, here's the deal. I want to give you $10,000. I'm going to give you $1,000 a month up until November, the elections. Because I want to know that I can call you at any time and you'll actually talk to me. And I said, you don't have to do that. No, I insist. So I said, Norman, just understand, you don't have to do it, but neither will I fail to appreciate it when it starts. So I thought, wow, this is great. And he said 10,000 because it was to be tax-free as a gift, as opposed
Right.
So
that's cool. I sort of have a pay to talk to me sort of attitude here on generational change. People know that if they want to have conversation with me, they need to join on patreon.com.
That's a good one.
And that's very well said. Okay. So hold on. So we get to this little meeting and I'm sitting there and I don't really know my role yet. And they start talking and it was a mix of Hollywood talk and postmodernism. Norman's not talking. It's these two people, the TV producer and this younger woman who apparently had a lot of ties inside the Democratic Party as well in LA area. And at a certain point, I sounded like a whole meeting of jargon. They were developing a mission statement for the project. And Norman turned to me and said, Harvey, what do you think about this? And I said, well, I don't want to be impolite and I'm the stranger here, but I don't think what you're saying makes any sense at all. Why don't we just say the mission is to help create smart, educated, critical, engaged citizens? Simple. And Norman said, okay, this meeting's over. He said, but give me a moment. So he goes to the bathroom and he comes back from the bathroom and he said, this was a great meeting. We get out to the car, we sit down, and he says, now do you know why you're here?
Because somebody needed common sense in Hollywood.
Exact. That was, he needed me and he wanted somebody with a historical sensibility and a patriot. He loved Thomas Paine. He loved Thomas Paine. And he wanted somebody who knew Thomas Paine and the American Revolution. And he liked my progressive patriotism. Okay. So now we're beginning. I just got to tell you this. We're begin this drive. Now he's going to take me back through Hollywood, no highways. And he said to me, Harvey, when I was in the bathroom, I was standing there and I was pissing and I thought, I could die right here. And he said, he said, what do you make of that? I said, well, that would have been a real downer, Norman. And he said, and the point is that, and my point, which will be made better maybe in the next moment, is we're now heading into Hollywood and we're at a traffic light. And on the left, as I'm looking at Norman, I could see that there's like this strip joint, And
wow.
So it's like live nude girls in the window, it says.
Yeah.
And Norman says, hey, you want to go see live nude girls? And I said, I really would, Norman. The problem is you might die in there, and that would be really embarrassing. And he just broke into hysterics as I'm breaking into hysterics now. And one of the beauties with Norman is that he was a comedic writer, but he was always willing to play the straight man.
Right.
You know, he would feed a line, not knowing if he'd get the response, but it seemed to work. And, you know, so.
That's really funny. I thought you were going to say, like, as opposed to dead nude girls. I always found that funny that it says live nude
girls.
Well, how else would they be?
Yeah, well maybe because video or, you know, film or something like that. Right? Sorry, I'm getting scientific about it right now. But, you're right. You're absolutely right.
He was a legend. He really was.
Wait, and I know you got to go, but I got to finish. I got to at least give you the full arc.
Yes.
Okay.
Sunday.
So that Saturday. Well, then Saturday night he left me at the house because it was Academy Awards time, and on his machine he had hundreds of movies. He said, "Watch whatever you want." Okay, in this big, you know, viewing room. And I fell asleep anyhow. I was up too early. But the next morning I go up for breakfast, and I'll never forget this moment. We're sitting there and he starts writing something in a little notebook. And I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he actually turned to me in a way that scared the shit out of me for one brief instant. He looked at me angrily and said, "It's none of your fucking business." But I couldn't. I knew that if I failed to reply, I'd have failed completely. So I said to him, "I don't know, Norman. I just thought I might have something to learn from you." And he just broke in. He goes, "You know, that's why I love you." It was like just like that. Okay. Yeah. And then he said, "You know what we're going to do today?" I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Well, I don't like awards. I don't like award shows, but there are certain shows I love to go to. So I go for the rehearsals." Okay. And he said and it was the Grammys that day, the Grammy
right
that night. So we were going. So he said, "We're going to go to the Staples Center with he had two daughters from his, the then wife, who was my age, his wife at that point. Lynn Davis, who is now widowed. And these two little two daughters who were probably, I don't know, they were 13 or 14. They're in that range, really adorable kids, really smart little kids. And so we headed to the Grammys, and I was going to take it off the fridge. I actually have it on the fridge. When we got to the Grammys, the security was intense, and Norman, they recognized immediately. And by the way, it was an empty Staples. The place was basically empty except for the rehearsal.
Right.
But they loved having Norman there. And so we get there, and I wore my badge said talent on it.
The talent.
So we're sitting there. By the way, I don't know if this story is decent or not, but we're sitting there watching, and every one of the performers who'll be there that night is performing, like Tina Turner and others. It was just great. Here we are in this like premier seats. And then they have sort of actors and actresses who needed money who were sitting in the spots of the possible award winners.
Right.
So at one point, Norman turns to me and he says, "I got to go to the bathroom. Come with me to the bathroom." So, you know, we walk out, and the bouncers are all these really big guys who probably used to play football or basketball and stuff. This one tall African-American guy says, "Hey, Norman, I see you have your son here with you." Oh, he goes, "Yeah, he's home for the Grammys, so we're here, right?"
Yeah.
So we go into the men's room. I don't know. This is probably completely unkosher story, but we're at the urinals. Okay.
Separated by at least one.
At the urinals, and Norman turns to me and he goes, "So what do you think of this?" And I know we're thinking, you know, the show, and I said, "This is tremendous." So this guy down at the end says, "Don't say that kind of thing here in Hollywood in the urinals," right? And it was just like adorable moment, right? So we go back out, and so then the Black Eyed Peas come in, and Will sees me, and he hobbles over because he has his boot on. He gives me this big hug. He goes, "Oh, I'm glad to see you're still here." You know, that kind of, you know who the fuck I was, really.
You're the world's most premier academic mind.
Exactly. Intellectual and academic.
Intellectual.
But I wanted the hug from Fergie. I didn't get that hug. So So then, I'm leaving something out. Now, this was touching in a way. This guy says, this paparazzi type guy comes over to take, and was starting to take pictures. And it was just like the two girls, they were just fabulous. I'm leaving out some other parts of the story. I get on the plane to come home because at that point I had to get out to the airport. I get on the plane to come home, and I swear to God, I did something that you only see on TV or in, I actually took this thumb and I went like this, and I pinched myself.
Right.
The whole thing was so surreal, but that was the start of my friendship with Norman. And
that's funny though. That's a good story. But that, you know what? That's exactly how I would figure Norman Lear would be.
Yeah.
Like that, it's exactly who I would figure he would be. And I think he'd have an amazingly good sense of humor and very smart sense of humor. I think that's awesome.
I think it also says a lot about how people reacted when he passed. It wasn't a few people, it was everybody, universally. Wow. And the reason I think that happened is because most of what comes in and out of Hollywood is not endearing. It's very self-centered, it's very egotistical, and it's very cold. And Norman is the complete opposite, it would appear, of all of those attributes.
There are two things I do want to point out to you, which really are impressive to me about Norman. Norman, did you know that Norman, for a while, owned a copy of the Declaration of Independence?
I did not know that.
So they discovered a copy of the Declaration. It was like one of those classic stories where they just discovered it on like the back of a big painting or picture or whatever. Mm-hmm. And Sotheby's put it up for auction. Whoever owned it put it up for auction through Sotheby's. There were two major contenders. One was a very rich, a billionaire conservative who is a famous figure. He's basically helped save and rescue the New York Historical Societies, that kind of figure. And Norman beat him out for the Declaration. And Norman doesn't collect those kinds of things. He didn't collect those kinds of things. He did it because he had this idea. If he had the Declaration, he could put it on the road to cities and get celebrities to turn out and make it that 18-year-olds should come and register to vote. It was called Declare Yourself. And it went around the country, and it was hugely successful. And I worked with him on that a bit too. And he flew me into DC for when he was going to deliver that speech, which was really kind of nice. And I've got a whole set of stories there, but I won't go into that. But the other thing is that back in the 70s, it was about 81 or so, he walked away from television, and he had won 6 Emmy Awards. I mean, he had, like shows galore on television at the same time. They were award winning. But he walked away because he wanted to fight the religious right. You know about this?
No.
Oh, okay. And one of the first things he did is he literally, I don't know how he got sponsors. You'd never see anyone do this today. He produced a 2-hour show on, I think it was ABC, called I Love Liberty. And he got everything from the Muppets to major actors. He got Barry Goldwater. I don't know if you know that Goldwater may well have been the father of the new right, but he hated the religious right.
Yeah, that's true.
And so he came on this show in support of Norman's campaign against anyone who believed that the Constitution in any way had religious requirements. Okay. And also Father Hester, who was the president of Notre Dame. I mean, this was a 2-hour production on television, mainstream television that he produced. And he just committed himself and then he created around that time People for the American Way, which was his lobbying effort pretty much. So, yeah.
He was special.
That's cool.
Can I just do one last thing?
Of course you can.
Norman had this idea that he was going to create this video because the Christians were all about being born again. So he created this video. What's that?
Yeah, evangelicals.
Evangelicals. Sorry, what did I say? Christians are all about?
Just Christians, but it's.
So, but he produced this video. They found this singer-songwriter with this great song, and then a whole host of black choirs, from Philadelphia, places like that. He got all across the country people to be a part of this song. It's on YouTube. It was called "Born Again American." Okay, and so as he was working, he wanted to add verses to the song, and every day he would contact me and say, "What do you think of this?" And I thought he really wanted a critical thought. And one day he finally said, "Harvey, you're not getting the point. I want to be affirmed. You're not a music critic. I want to be affirmed." I felt terrible, like I had really upset him because he wanted me to, because I didn't want it to, I wanted it to be more collective, and he was still doing it as an I kind of thing. And but it was great. I mean, it really was phenomenal.
That's very cool that you knew Norman Lear.
Yeah. And it's great that he left such an impact in such a great way. And, you've been very impactful for us. We have these conversations because we do have, a very, we're at a low point right now in a lot of ways, from the highs of 2015, 2016 thinking that we were getting somewhere when we got Alex into Congress and Cori Bush got in there, Summer Lee, obviously Rashida, who's been, in my opinion, the best of them. But at the same time, we're seeing just how hard the corporate establishment will rain holy hell on us for attempting to change things. The one silver lining I would say that we can hang our hats on going forward is that I think a lot more people are a lot more aware now of how things are done. They're a lot more knowledgeable about the importance of things like the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights. And the corruption of the system is just out in the open now. And once that happens, the public is going to reject it. It's a question of not if, but when. We're hoping it happens sooner rather than later. And as long as the message is about labor first and foremost, I think we'll get there. It may not happen tomorrow, but it will happen because it's where the arc of history always bends. Maybe it'll happen, not as quick as it should have.
I'm still trying to get bodily autonomy back here in Florida.
I don't understand. I don't even understand why that hasn't been harped on by the Democrats.
Well, because they blew it.
They did.
Well, they did, but you'd imagine that they'd want to be running on securing what
they are now. I mean, and I think they are in the places where that's an issue, but we're being shown left and right that once it's brought to the states and people vote on it, that for the most part, it's going in the direction that we want it to go. Yeah. And the reality is, as someone who studied this in law school, I knew that Roe versus Wade would inevitably be overturned. I knew that was going to happen. It really wasn't a very good decision. It was, and I don't mean in theory in terms of what the rights are, in terms of that how it was written. And the fact of leaving it to the states actually works out well when we have legitimate voting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's the point, is that we're getting that in places because of that. I mean, Florida, fortunately, we do have ballot initiatives, so we're able to vote on it here.
I think it also proves that there is a significant portion of those who vote for the GOP that are not religious fanatics the way that they project that everybody who's in the GOP happens to be. Because every state that has had the opportunity to vote on women's reproductive rights votes for it overwhelmingly, even if they're still voting red. And the proof was in the pudding in Ohio, because you had that billionaire psycho, evangelical fundamentalist in Illinois that was pumping millions upon millions of dollars, and they still didn't go for it. And to me, that's just a sign of, ultimately, I understand why people have one view of states' rights, but when states' rights are done where the people have a say, there's no question.
My point is that in and of itself isn't a bad thing. Like, because states are going to generally do, I think we'll get it here.
Yeah.
It'll pass here as well. And then it won't be an issue here either, no matter how red our legislature is. And so but we must continue to put the pressure on and stick with the message of labor and the 21st economic.
Yeah, I absolutely. And that's the thing. And I wish that in some ways, I kind of wish Sean Fain had made a demand on Biden.
Yes, I agree.
Something. He made it sound like he would in the very beginning. Like, our endorsement isn't free and all that. But then at the end of the day, all he had to do was show up for 12 minutes, and now he gets an endorsement.
Yeah, that's where I think that the rubber will meet the road in the future. You have leverage, use it. Right now, you don't have it, or you've given it away, and now you're seeing the ramifications that will unfold as a result. So, we're just a small but mighty podcast, but we're going to continue to try to get that message out there. Guys, make sure you are following Mr. Kaye's work. And if you are not familiar with the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights, Harvey, how can people find that so they can read up on it and learn more?
If you type in 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights, you'll likely go to a number of different locations for it. The quickest way to get to it is if you go to Progressive Democrats of America.
Okay. So PDA has it on their website.
PDA has it on their website. Also, you post things on your.
Peter does.
Yes.
Yeah, Peter. I think you did this last time. There's that piece I did back in the autumn. To save democracy, we need an economic bill of rights. I'll send you the link again when we get off.
Please do.
Yeah.
Because that to me, that's right now the fundamental piece in this.
We'll add it in our description.
Because in there is where I make the case for labor to take it over. Okay.
Well, that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
There's no question. That is the only thing that will save us.
Yeah.
There is nothing else, because labor is ultimately how we right the ship, because corporate special interests completely own our system now.
Yeah.
And to realize that, you want to call it oligarchy, you want to call it fascism, whatever you want to call it, the corporate state is here. It doesn't have to be here to stay.
Oh, it's here.
But it's here now. And the only way we're getting out of this is through a labor revolution. And that is it. Harvey, it is always a pleasure to have you. And the storytelling is totally enjoyable.
I appreciate the fact that I didn't realize you'd be willing to and able to go on a bit. So
we'll let you go.
Like I said, you're one of our favorites. You're one of our it's an open invitation,
always.
If you will. And that's why it's always great to see you. Keep fighting the good fight. And we will definitely be talking to you again soon.
Okay. And by the way, I hope you guys don't get any more hurricanes out of season.
Oh, the season's getting longer and longer.
Yeah. Pretty soon we're not going to know what the hell is what anymore. So we're just kind of expecting. But remember, climate change is just a theory. So hang on.
Thanks,
okay, thank you very much. Take care of yourself, please.
Good seeing you, brother.
Growing up down here, hurricane season to me was always Russian roulette feeling. That's how every hurricane season felt like that. But now the seasons are a little bit longer. Like I remember when you wouldn't have seen a storm past September, and now we've seen them. Obviously there's been huge shifts in the temperature in the water, and we know that coral is being cooked and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, what stories are it that you want to cover now that I'm going to be like dragged into to discuss? What ridiculous nonsense?
Why do you have to talk like that?
Because it's going to be something that I'm going to find infuriating.
We talk at length about labor and why that's such an important focus of our time. And that's why a lot of people who still don't understand that you cannot beat Trump without an actual substitution, an actual differentiation.
There is no substitute.
There is none. You cannot look at President Biden, who may not be Donald Trump in terms of policy across the board, but his policy is really shitty.
And that's really the Porsche.
And I don't need to hear anything about what Trump would be doing regarding Gaza if he were there right now. The difference between Trump and Biden when it comes to Ukraine is correct. The difference between Trump and Biden when it comes to Syria is correct. Would it be the same with Gaza? Maybe not. But the foreign policy component is a huge part of it. And a lot of more people, when it comes to foreign policy especially, have a libertarian bent in this country. We do not want interventionism at the level that we've been at.
By far, most people left and right agree on that.
Correct.
For all different reasons. Like everybody has their reasons why they don't think, like there's those of us that have a moral position on it. Some people don't like it because it's economically not, sound for whatever, or they think it's not good for national security reasons. All of those things are true.
And the other unheralded reason that a lot of people are still not understanding the appeal of Donald Trump, and we've only said it a million times.
And by the way, not to us. You have to keep saying this.
Right.
Someone's going to pull this clip. The appeal of Donald Trump.
Yes.
Not to us.
But the appeal of Donald Trump as a whole to the working class of this country comes from people like Stephen Colbert, whether you like it or not. Highly educated, overeducated, wealthy, aloof liberals who present themselves as better than.
They're so elitist.
Are the people that ultimately turn off working class people. Because again, it's one thing if the Democratic Party was the party of labor with wealthy liberals. The Democratic Party today is the party of wealthy liberals that shun working people.
Yeah, see, therein lies the problem. I don't mind wealthy liberal people. It's all good as long as they're supporting the least of these and working people.
But this is Stephen Colbert and the liberal establishment in a nutshell.
Okay.
I know how numb we've become, but it's not normal. No other candidate for the presidency has ever had to pause his campaign to defend himself in multiple courts. And I would like to point out that in all 7 of his cases, no one doubts that he did these things. We're just sitting around patiently waiting to find out if the wheels of justice will grind fast enough for there to be any consequences. And the media is covering it like it's any other political story, like it's all horse race.
It's not the connection, it's StreamYard. And sometimes it works. It just depends. I don't know what the differing thing is. It would be helpful if we had somebody that really understood the mechanics of StreamYard and how to set up our system and all that. But we don't
understand. You see, when you talk like this is when I don't take you seriously.
No, that is his appeal to bigots.
And there are bigots that support Trump.
But to people that aren't bigots, that's not what the appeal is. There's different people have different reasons for liking him. And he definitely appeals to bigots. But I don't think it's necessarily that he's so bigoted, because I don't think he is. He just somehow gives license for the bigots to be so open about how bigoted they are. I actually don't think that.
Trump sees it as a means to an end.
I think is he a racist, misogynist kind of person in general? Yeah, probably. Like any older white Eurocentric Western person, yes. But do I think that Trump has a specific hatred towards any? No, I think Trump's just a narcissist.
Trump made a substantial investment in HBCUs when he was president.
He just goes whatever
he thinks is going to help him win.
In the moment,
that's
right?
Yeah,
he doesn't care. That's the thing. So that's why his issue is definitely not race. He feels superior to everyone.
And the problem that a lot of people get, again, you're falling into the trap.
But bigots do like him.
Yes.
There is no doubt about it, because he emboldens the bigots by playing into their nonsense. And so he just knows how to lure them like the Pied Piper.
And Danny, that can all be true.
Oh, yes, it is.
And at the end of the day, that's still more appealing to the independent working voter than Joe Biden.
Than an elitist, even though Trump is also an elitist.
Correct.
We're living in a bizarro world. It's what it feels like. And he's definitely a con man and a buffoon. And
equal opportunity exploiter.
Exactly.
If he thinks that's what's going to help him win, that's what, again.
He cares about one color, and that's green. And that's it. That's all he cares about is money and him and money. So to say that, he hates blacks or he hates he's just a narcissist. I don't think he even considers anybody but himself.
And I'm still convinced that if Bernie was the nominee right now, he's the one person who could beat Trump.
Still could, although it would be. The problem is that's like a fool me once, fool me twice, and he's lost credibility in his willingness to actually fight for it.
Yeah, and that again is, and this becomes sort of like a two-parter in a way. Because as you guys know, I am in commercial real estate. And this decision in New York to make him pay $350 million for inflating his real estate values is a very risky, dangerous move. And you're going to see now how Letitia James makes this all political. So here's a quick clip.
Today, justice has been served. Today, we prove that no one is above the law. No matter how rich, powerful, or politically connected you are, everyone must play by the same rules. We have a responsibility to protect the integrity of the marketplace. And for years, Donald Trump engaged in deceptive business practices and tremendous fraud. Donald Trump falsely, knowingly inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself, his family, and to cheat the system. Donald Trump may have authored the art of the deal, but he perfected the art of the steal.
Free judgment.
Yeah, you know, this is one of those things where I always, and this isn't the only case wherein I've seen this kind of thing with, like, liberals really are so big on cutting their nose to spite their face, you know, so it's like you go after him for something that now that is a can of worms.
Now that's a set of precedent for people that are in real estate. And if you think that that's not going to have adverse effects, remember, I believe in a free market if you have a system that's actually properly regulated, you know, like a hybrid system. We don't have that here. For the people that are trying desperately to have enough money to afford to buy a home so that they can start accumulating wealth and building equity, you know how much more difficult things are going to get now?
That's a very slippery slope. So what they're willing to do just to go get Trump
is to get everybody else in the process.
And of all the ways to get him, you're talking about somebody in real estate projecting higher value of their property to get lending. You mean like every frigging person does in that industry? I mean, it's again one of those things like, yes, there's probably a ton of things that you could probably find that Trump has done that are illegal that you could get him on. And this is just one of those things that's so ubiquitous that now what?
And so now
how does this work?
So now he gets to play the victim like he always does. And guess what? It works.
Well, because this is particularly stupid.
Here we go.
All you see is bitterness and revenge and hatred. Judge and Gore, and just find me $355 million for doing everything right. 355. And these repulsive abuses of power are not just an attack on me. They're really an attack on you and all Americans. It's a disgusting thing.
Really? They really
it's really
let
terrible.
him.
It's really terrible.
It's really like they roll out a red carpet to his martyrdom. You know what I mean?
I'm really persecuted, Jen.
Well, and it you know what? This is what
I want to tell you. I see the people in the chat. They totally sympathize with my
Nobody
plight.
sympathizes
No,
with
my
you.
plight is really big.
You don't have a plight.
It's terrible. Can you believe that they are finding me for being such a stable genius when it comes to real estate? I've always been a stable genius.
This is one of those things. This is one of those things that, you know, people will say, well, just because everyone does it doesn't mean it's okay. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But then you got to just change the system. You don't go after one like it doesn't make sense.
I'm totally persecuted. If they're all blaming me for their problems, that's a really terrible.
There are so many other things they could go after you for.
They totally could, but they're not going to do that.
I don't know. You've been sued like more than 1,000 times. Do people
but
realize that?
People
just think about that. Can you imagine?
They just don't like me.
I've never been sued once.
That's okay. You're not there yet, but you'll get there one day.
There are not enough.
I will. Listen,
people get sued at that level when they don't know how to conduct honorable business.
Excuse me. I'll sue you for free. How about that? Would that be fun?
Because you don't conduct honorable business.
Whoever said honorable? It's all about winning.
Well,
winning.
Therein is why you get sued.
A big W, winning. That's what we're doing. We're totally winning. We're making America great again. In 24 because they just can't get out of their own.
No, they can't.
That's the way it's going to be.
Oh God, it's like it's like such a race to the bottom. It's such a race to the bottom. And again, I'll put out I support Dr. Cornel West. I will support Dr. Cornel West's
despite
campaign.
If he has a couple of speaking moments where we don't agree.
I'm not getting into any of that. Because I support his message and I want people to hear his message and I support his mission. So I do that, but I am realistic and I recognize that he very well might not be on my ballot, and I will make a determination at that point based who is on my ballot. And no, I do not like Jill Stein as much as I like Dr. West, but I do like her enough. And she's certainly the only anti-Zionist that isn't trying to genocide an entire group of
And
people.
this-
So I'm going to go with that.
And this also gets back to this whole idea about immigration, which I talk about. It's not a question of being elitist. This comes back to what I've been saying for the longest time.
Yeah, that's not elitist. That's actually true, but it's created.
The
It's
reason
created.
why we're dealing with this situation at the border that so many people want to pretend is not happening is because at the end of the day,
This makes me want to
when
cry.
labor finds its sea legs for the first time in a long time, the second they get punched in the mouth, they run to the hills without actually standing up and fighting and saying, no, we're going to turn this whole fucking country into Scandinavia, which is essentially at this point what kind of needs to happen. So what ends up happening when, let's say, the United Auto Workers of America make the decision that they are literally fucking Elon Musk in the ass without lube by making sure that the people who are working for UAW are making double. They are making double what Tesla workers are making. So you know what you do in situations like that? You don't embolden the labor movement. What you do is you open up the floodgates at the border and
To let
bring
in cheap
people
labor.
that are going to work for shit. And you know who gets fucked in the process since we have no real labor laws in this country? The people who are in the positions of owning these mega corporations who say, I'll hire whoever the fuck I want. You're not going to do anything about it. Because that's how it is in this country.
I know, but he isn't wrong that people definitely hate on immigrants, and it's definitely
100%.
a very sore spot for me.
Yeah.
This is something that I just, for the life of me, I do not understand this.
And
I do not understand this.
But
I
again,
just don't
eventually,
understand the problem.
but eventually you have to see the scam. At some point, you get, and again, I'm not
all of that stuff is so secondary to me. I honestly,
I'm only using Elon as an example because when the numbers came out of what the UAW union, what the workers won in terms of their salaries, in terms of their benefits, when they measured it up against Tesla and what they were getting versus what Tesla was getting, you would have to be a moron if you are in any way, shape, or form capable of working on an assembly line, going to work for Tesla instead of working for Daimler Chrysler, for example. You'd be an idiot.
It depends on where you live and what's available to you.
That's true.
You know, not everybody has the same opportunities.
So rather than Elon doing what you would think would be the normal circumstance, which is supporting labor, which of course he doesn't. And
why would you think that he would do that?
I'm saying that if the trends were moving in that direction, that we were moving in the direction towards we're going to help labor now. That's not the way this works.
And I'm gonna okay, sorry, keep going.
The way it works is that you are going to cut people off at the knees and bury them alive, because that is what oligarchs like Elon Musk can do if they want to do it. They can just say, oh, okay, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to bring in more people from the other countries, and they're going to work for pennies on the dollar, and you're not going to be able to do a thing about it.
And here's where I can blow everybody's minds. I actually believe that labor should unite in the world. I actually believe that if labor in this country united with the labor in Mexico and in Latin America and in the places where those people were leaving in horrible conditions, and places like, I don't know, where big companies go and get cheap labor and just set up shop in other countries, and all of those countries and all of the labor was regulated together as a block, all working people of the world, then none of this would be able to happen at the way that it's happening. But the immigration issue, to me, it's so fucked up how everybody is sitting around and talking about it like strictly from a political standpoint, like we're talking about currency, or we're talking about like products, or we're talking about anything like that. These are people. And I still, for the life of me, I don't care what anybody's policy is. I do not understand treating people in this manner. That's what I don't understand. Like, nobody can explain to me why, even if, let's say I were to agree, yes, well, they're illegal and they're breaking the law and they shouldn't be here. Okay. I hear you.
We can still treat them with dignity and respect.
They're
not less than human.
I just don't understand.
Kind of like how Israelis look at Palestinians as less than human. Well, we have a propensity to look at people who are illegal aliens.
I find that so offensive. I find that so unbelievably
It's just so, and again, I
so
listen
gross.
to some of these guys and all I'm thinking
it's
is,
so disgusting.
you can have an argument without having to be cold-hearted.
Well, and this is the point, is that how are any of us better served by treating people the way we treat them at the border. Forget whether or not you think they should automatically be citizens, whether or not they should get amnesty, whatever it is. Forget all of the policy. How are any of us better off with how we're treating people like that? I just don't understand. And the way that we get away with it is because of so much of that hateful rhetoric. And that is something, unfortunately, that Trump does very much fuel. And I do agree that it's a very common denominator to get people to punch down on immigrants. And that's what they bank on. And that's what they use to distract us. Don't worry about how horrible everything is here for you. Don't worry about that you don't have health care. Don't worry about all the debt that you're in. Don't worry about all that. It's the brown people coming across the border that are the real problem. And it's almost like over and over and over again, we keep falling for this. And it's just crazy to me. The people that have less power than you are never the source of your problems.
Always punch up, never punch down.
It's crazy. I just do not understand how we can treat people this way.
To everybody who has supported this evening, Tony, 1 month. Happy to have you as always. A guy speaking. It's good to see you.
That's Chip.
And of course, we're viewing the micromilitarism of the end of the empire. Chris Hedges, one of the smartest guys
here's
out
my
there.
thing about Chris, and I watch him regularly. And as a journalist, I so respect him. Mm-hmm. I just wish he would maybe smile occasionally. I just wish, like,
after what that guy went through at the New York Times covering the war.
I know, but it's like he's so morose. And I have so much respect for him. So
how could you not? Double K, what could we say?
Thank you so much.
You're the very best.
She's the best.
Really appreciate you.
It's helpful.
To labor. The Republicans want China and India to pay for education. That might.
Well, they want to take, this is something that bothers me. Did you see that ad that people have been putting out that Cenk did that's pretty good in terms of like the people not buying the food because they have to pay for killing the Palestinians there in the supermarket?
I haven't seen that, but I get it.
Okay, so it's this thing. And the premise is, okay, we're supporting that. But the fact that he's tying it again into that it's taking, like, not addressing the MMT in the room. The fact that he's making it be like, well, we can't have this because we're doing that. That bothers me coming from somebody on the left.
Well, that's why we've got Danny Windham here with his $10. Thank you very much. And of course, it is important to note, and it's one of the things that's very telling, because as we've pointed out, there is a lot of momentum building in RFK's third-party run, but he also falls into that trap. Maybe it's not even a trap. Maybe he just deliberately misspeaks because of the fact that he insists that we are in debt. We are we are trillions of dollars in debt. No.
Well, let's not forget, he really was running originally. He's a Democrat.
That's true.
So, I mean, he's one of them.
But they're all guilty of it. They're all guilty of not talking about how economics.
It just really pisses me off when it's somebody that's running supposedly to the left of the Democrats. Like, if you're running to the left and you're not.
Even Bernie can't say it. It's amazing. But it's the truth. It's like at some point you just got to have the balls to just say, yeah, this is how it is. Doug Grinsberg's, great to see you. Been meaning to add 21st century section to Second Bill of Rights Wikipedia. So you edit on Wikipedia? That's awesome.
Nice.
Sunstein book, PDA, Minsky, Alan Minsky, great guy. Harvey Kaye,
yeah, they're
Bernie, Mass, West Virginia, etc.
Yeah, the 21st century Bill of Rights is common sense. That's really what it is.
And of course, a guy speaking, only unions can save us.
You know.
And that's the truth.
But yet, the unions need us.
They do.
To save them, right? Like, that's part of it, is it has to be this sort of like working together of people that are not in the unions to still be supporting labor and propping them up so that they could bring up the rest of labor with them. I mean, because that's the problem, is if we're relying on unions, especially in places like Florida, it's just not going to be enough. There has to be outside help.
Ray, I know you're supporting Trump, but at the end of the day, if you look at the numbers, it's pretty evenly split with a slight edge to Biden voters moving over to RFK.
I think, honestly, at this point, we're still too early to really tell so many things. I mean,
most of the decisions are not made until the end of the summer, early fall.
Right.
And at that point, then you're really scrapping. But
it'll be interesting after what happens at the Democratic convention, because, well, First of all, I think there's going to be like some serious show of opposition and revolution outside that they're going to.
They're going to have to create outside the Chicago Convention Center. They're going to have to create a perimeter that is so wide
that you won't even be able to get near.
Now, I hope there are people that'll be able to sneak in, and usually there's a few that slip through, or there's actually people who work security detail who actually agree with the protest.
Well, there can also be delegates that are pissed off. There could be people that are legitimately there that are angry. There were when Bernie was there. I mean, it does happen, but people protesting on the outside aren't going to be able to get anywhere near it. But a lot of things can happen between now and then, and it'll be interesting to see who actually comes out of that and is the candidate.
That's
because it's sort of like all bets are off with all of your numbers, depending on if it's not Biden who comes out of that, right? Everything right now is premised on Trump Biden, but that isn't necessarily going to be the case.
It's definitely not. And the times we have are only going to get more interesting. I do believe we are slated for 1 o'clock on Thursday. We are going to be speaking. We should be speaking again. Preface that Angie Nixon did not show up tonight. That is sometimes it happens with the assistance of her team as well, and then it didn't come through. So it is what it is. But assuming that our esteemed guests will show up on Thursday, we will be having two, not one, but two well-versed and active activists for Free Palestine. One is Sally Hunt, and the other is Carissa Explains Nothing.
Well, she's sort of, it's a mock of the TV show Carissa Explains It All was the TV show. So she's kind of mocking, yes. The white liberal.
Nothing at all.
Right, the white liberal.
That's right. That's right.
And what else are we working on? We're going to get Jill Stein on the show.
Yeah, we'll have Jill Stein come on probably the following week. We would like to have Dr. Cornel West come back on as well. We're still going to try to have RFK on the show. We think it's necessary to have these conversations. People need to know that there are other options out there, and that it's not a question of, well, third parties can't win. Yeah, that's true. Third parties can't right now, but that doesn't mean that building infrastructure to force the hand of the two major parties to actually acquiesce to the needs of working people. There is no more voting for the lesser of two evils as a construct in this culture. It's done. And no more obvious could it possibly be than with Trump and Biden. It's just too clear. We cannot.
That's interesting. I think I saw parts of it. I think I saw clips of Ron's interview with her. I have not met her. I actually am looking forward to meeting her. I am friendly with her campaign manager. So I was contacted to see if we wanted to have her on the show. So that should be able to work out.
It will be. Yeah, it will definitely be interesting.
And there's a lot of things coming up in terms of me forwarding him authors and people that I'm reading. So see if you can get certain people.
With that said, Henry Kajawa, Ray, Chris Garrett, Travers, of course, me, myself, and I, Brian, Danny Wyndham, Metalopoly, Henry Kajawa.
You already said that one.
I did?
Yes.
Randy Giovanetti. Neshoba Chamek Shuti, I believe you are new. Nice to see you. You don't like my music. Who else? Who else have we not thanked? Red Cloud, great to see you, of course. Guy Speaking, thank you for your amazing support. Double K, of course, great support. Carne Verde, amazing as always. And of course, Travers, as we know, brings the humor, which is always good. It's been a very lively chat. Doug Grinsberg's Hans Siedemann War Jesus is here. Ray J. Let's see. Anybody else that I am forgetting? I always like to call them all out. Always like you guys to know that we appreciate you all being here.
We do. But you know what's going to happen if we ever get big? Then you're not going to.
We're consistently getting 40 people watching a live stream without a big, like a big name. Jason R. Thank you for checking in.
We're small potatoes.
Is there small potatoes?
We're small potatoes.
You know, like my Blue Heaven. You know what I'm talking about?
So I was totally craving the Venucci's pizza.
Really?
I was not tonight.
Z-Manny? Yeah, we'll go there again. Yeah. Oh, well, he understands. Venucci Brothers Pizza in Hollywood, Florida. Highly recommend. It's really good. And we pay full price. Sorry, I just have to.
It's amazingly good. Seriously, pizza by the slice, but like old school. So like a slice of pizza is like it's a meal. It's like especially and he uses, and I do mushrooms, and he uses like really fresh mushrooms, and it's like they're piled on. Like
I have fake
fold
meat.
it in half. It's so gross that you do that. You ruin it. But fold
That's
it in
your
half, kind of pizza. Like it's really good.
Tony D, Nelson Ortega, I think that covered, and Donald James. Jessica May, thank you for checking in. Or just, is it May or Mai? M-A-I? Is that Mai?
May?
Jessica,
I don't know.
I think so. Jessica, we'll go say Jessica Mai. That's what we'll say.
I couldn't even begin to tell you what language, what root, what ethnicity. I don't know.
Jessica wants you to know that she thinks your highlights look pretty.
Thank you.
And the butterfly earrings.
You're lovely too, Jessica Mai.
Yep.
You're lovely. But I don't know origin names enough to be able to know the pronunciation. It's not like, now if it were a Latino name, then I would know the pronunciation because I understand
Wesley, thank you. Now we know. And that is very interesting. Wolf and tobacco pipe.
Interesting. Chickasaw.
There you go.
I like all things indigenous. Like I just do. I like all things indigenous, and I like things indigenous to pretty much any continent.
From now on, when I see President Kamala Harris, I'm thinking of when she was explaining the other day, wax on,
wax off.
Wax off. That's it. The wax on, wax off president. Sorry, can't help it. Schultze showed up. Village Pizzeria make that kind, fold in half.
You know, I mean, we're old school. Like seriously, a meal. I honestly, when you get the slice to go, it's a slice in a box that would probably fit a 12-inch like a pizza, and it's just and it's hearty.
Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. Remember, for as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel.
It's helpful.
Get yourself that Lulu sticker. We've had some amazing support this evening. It's always great. But of course, as you guys know, any amount that you can contribute,
it's all
really
helpful.
Nice. $25 contributions.
Get you a t-shirt or a jersey.
You know, it's all good. And then, of course, if you do not want to put your name on the grid, you could always go over to Cash App. And so any and all support that you can give our channel really means a lot. Remember, we'll be on at 1 o'clock on Thursday, and we have lots of wonderful guests on the horizon that will be coming back on the show. So make sure that you give us a like, make sure that you are subscribed, make sure that you click that bell, but also make sure that once our live is over, you go and leave a comment. So that way more and more people can end up seeing this live stream. It really helps a lot. We're appreciative of each and every one of you. We'll see you Thursday.
Bye all.